In this video, we're going to discuss the resource and resource node behaviors because they do kind of go hand in hand. So unfortunately, I didn't really have a good tool to use, right? I don't have any pickaxes or axes that I could chop wood with. And so I thought it might be good to just use the knife that comes with Max. And instead, we're just going to milk this cow, or I guess get some sort of resource from this cow. So all I've got to do is come up to the cow and use whatever I have on the cow. And what you'll find is that it'll produce a resource. So in this case, it produced a hamburger. Let's keep going because we're going to need a couple more hamburgers. There we go. So we got 5 hamburgers from this cow. And if I wait around long enough, the cow will come back and I can get 5 more. But there we have our hamburgers, and now we can make lunch. So that's the resource node resource behaviors. Let me show you how that works. So obviously it doesn't need to be a cow. It doesn't need to be the knife. It can be a lot of different things. But the idea is that you have a node, which is the cow, and you have a resource, which is what the cow produces. Me growing up in the city, I imagine this is how hamburgers work. So let's start with the node. So we have the extraction node type. So in this case, there's 2 options. You can have a growth or you can have extraction. I demonstrated extraction, but you could also have growth. So let me explain what the difference is. If you had a tree and that tree was meant to produce, say, apples, for example, that would be growth. It's growing the apples over a period of time and it produces up to the amount that it's supposed to produce. And then you collect those apples and then it continues to produce more over time. That would be growth. In my case, I have to physically extract the hamburger from the cow using the knife, right? So that's extraction. The node tool name is the name of the tool needed for the cow. So I mentioned early on that I didn't have a pickaxe, I didn't have an axe or anything like that. And that would be useful if I were to select a tool here. So let's suppose I had my hatchet, right? So I would need to have a tool called hatchet in order to extract anything from this particular node. But by putting any in there, I could even use my fist. It wouldn't matter. Literally anything connecting with the cow is going to produce the resource that it's supposed to produce. Then we have the node max quantity, which is the number of resources, whatever it is, that it's going to produce up to this amount before it's depleted. And you saw the cow disappeared once I hit 5. So that's the number. The node spawn time, which is how long will it take before this node respawns, right? So if I waited around a minute, the cow would come back, I could get more hamburgers. Then you have the resource entity spawn time. So you remember before I was saying if you had a growth type node, then it would take 1 minute for the next resource to spawn. That's what that is. So that would only apply if you were using growth. And then of course the node spawn time would only apply if you're using extraction. So it's kind of works both ways. The resource entity name, which is the name of the resource object. And you'll notice that in this scene, I have the hamburger sitting right there. Now, if I were to play the scene again, the hamburger would be disappeared, right? So it doesn't have to be, it has to be in the scene in order to exist, but it gets hidden to begin with, and then you're able to extract it. So it's really just there as a reference point for the behavior to understand what it's supposed to produce. You give it the name of the object that you want it to produce, and that's what it's going to replicate each time. Then you have the node use range, which is how close do you have to be to the node in order to interact with it. The node use prompt, which is just the text that you saw when I got close to it, said extract resources. It's just a prompt to let the player know that, hey, here's something you can interact with. So I could really say anything. The node tool prompt. So let's suppose that it required a hatchet for whatever reason to extract hamburgers from the cow. then it would say, and I didn't have the hatchet on me because I had the knife, it would say a tool is required to extract this resource. So that would be, specific. Then you have the scalar tick box. So you can see that it is unticked in this scenario. That means that when I hit the cow, it's not going to scale down and shrink down. If that was ticked and I hit the cow, it would reduce in size until eventually it was depleted. So that might make sense if you're hitting a rock, and it's just reducing in size until it's broken into nothing. But for the cow, it would just shrink it down by a percentage and it would become a smaller and smaller cow, which would hilarious, but doesn't actually make any sense. And then of course you've got the sound slot for what sound it plays when you strike the cow. And when it comes to the tools, I should probably note that here in the player character, when we look at the weapon that they have, there are tools in here. So theoretically, if I have any, I could use the pump action shotgun and just shoot it and it would pump out hamburgers. But in these scenarios where you have like a slash there, when there's like a subfolder, you have to use the whole thing. So for instance, if I were to use, say, tool slash shovel, right, then I would reference tools slash shovel, just like you see here. So whatever you see here is what you would reference if you want a specific tool. Otherwise, if you want to choose any, then you can just choose any and that's fine. All right, so that's the resource node. That's half of the equation. You have to have that set up, right? But then you have to have a resource, like I mentioned before. Now, this resource needs to be a collectible object and it needs to be a resource, right? So those things both have to be checked. When you select a collectible object, you do need to add that object to your collectible settings. Don't forget to do that. If you're not selling it or putting it in a vendor somewhere, all this stuff doesn't matter. Just name it. And then in my case, I chose is a mobile no, because I don't want it to get stuck when it's produced. You notice that it just kind of drops from the cow. And so if you say no, it's just going to float in air. So you want it to drop to the ground. So affected by gravity is turned on, is immobile in this case is no. Okay. Once you have that all set up, then you have your resource behavior. And the pickup text obviously is just what it's going to say when you get close enough to the object in order to pick up the resource. The collected text is what it's going to say once you've collected the resource. The quantity is how many of that item are you picking up. So if you were collecting berries, maybe you get 5 berries with every bunch or something like that, for example. So you can change the quantity of how much you actually collect per resource. The pickup range, just how close do you have to be in order to pick it up. The pickup style, in this case, is manual. So I have to go over there, point to it, and actually press E to pick it up. If I choose automatic, then if I get close to it, as long as I'm within the pickup range, I'm just going to pick it up immediately. But I want you guys to be able to see the hamburger. So I kept it manual. We have the prompt display. So the prompt display, we have local and screen. Local just means it's local to the object. The text is going to appear somewhere around the object that it's referencing. If you choose screen, that's going to put it dead center at the bottom of your screen. The item highlight is going to be whether or not the item has a sort of aura around it or a highlighting outline to it, which uses the emissive texture for that effect. And then the sound is really, if you just look here, it'll tell you for harvesting the sound. So if you want some sort of feedback sound for when you pick it up, like a little click or something like that, you could put that in there. I wasn't picking them up, so I didn't really need the sound for anything. But that's it. You do need both. So if you're going to use resource node, you do need a resource, and that all needs to tick and tie back to itself, just like I showed you in this video. But you do need both. But that's the resource node and resource behaviors explained. If you enjoyed the video or if you learned anything new, please be sure to click the like button down below. If you're new here or if you just haven't subscribed yet, would love to have you stick around. Please be sure to do that. And lastly, if you'd like a notification for whenever new videos are posted, just click the bell icon and that'll let you know when a new video is ready. But that's it. Thanks so much for watching all the way through, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, don't forget there's a written guide for every behavior, including ones I haven't yet covered on this channel. And if you want to learn some more, why don't you check out this video next.